They are the greatest offensive team in NBA history. This is not a bias or an exaggerated statement. This is 100% backed up by the numbers. Once you hear the story of this supremely underrated team, you'll quickly understand why. They wanted nothing more than revenge. They were pissed and they took their anger out on the entire league. The result was a team that ran an offense that was impossible to contain. In the end, they had one of the most dominant playoff runs of all time. For this topic, I'm collaborating with CLNS NBA History and Storytellers. We'll have players from the '85 Lakers give us their unique insight. You cannot tell the story of this team without mentioning what happened in the 1984 finals. Losing in a tough 7-game series is one thing, but giving away multiple games is another. In games 2 and 4, they had one of the worst mental breakdowns that we've ever seen. It was one embarrassing mistake after another. There's no one that received more heat than Magic Johnson. It was the turnovers and missed free throws that caused the media to dub him the nickname Tragic Johnson. But he wasn't the only victim. The whole team was being criticized as weak-minded for allowing the Celtics' physicality to get to them. It was a label that no team ever wants to have, that they were soft. So this team that already won 4 titles and reached the finals in 4 of the past 5 seasons had something to prove.
1984, we play you guys at the Garden. We end up losing. And I'm going to tell you something. I probably shouldn't tell you this. But anyway, after that game, after we fought our way through the crowd, because I love the fact that the crowd was able to come on the floor, fought our way. We were in the locker room, and it was just horrible, man. And we were sitting there, and Magic and I were like one of the last 2 to take a shower. And we ended up sitting in the corner, taking a shower. I remember this vividly. The water's run over. And Magic said this. He said, "You know what, Coop? We'll never lose to these motherfuckers again." And I was like, but it was the way he said it. And I'm pretty sure Larry has said some things through the course. When your leaders say something a certain way, it makes you sit up and take attention. And you know, we came back that next year, Rob, and we had you guys #1 focus from day one.
This is a classic example of a team that played like they were possessed all season long from a bitter playoff defeat. According to the numbers, they have the all-time record for the highest field goal percentage for a single season. They shot 54.5% as a team. They were just relentless on the open floor, and they had so many weapons that could produce big numbers on any given night.
We were on a mission that year. I remember, when that series was over, it was probably 2 weeks later, we were all back working out. Guys were in the gym, guys were at UCLA in the track, playing at UCLA in the mornings till afternoons. And I knew we were just on a mission that year. It was a special year because of the fact that, we were all about winning and all about getting back, and we were hoping we would get back and see them again because we knew that we were the better team. So that whole season was very memorable. Like you said, we got off to a great start, and we just put our foot on the pedal. Coop, the whole year, man. We just didn't let up.
It all started with the MVP, Magic Johnson. To clarify, we're not talking about the most valuable player. That was Larry Bird. But all season, he was being dubbed the most valuable passer. There's no one that deserved that title more than him. The reason why the Lakers were so efficient was that Magic was putting his teammates in the best position to score. If you just look at the numbers, you wouldn't think that he did anything out of the ordinary for him. He averaged 18.3 points on 56% shooting, 12.6 assists, 6.2 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game. But his failures in the finals forced him to mature in various ways. He was out to prove that he was mentally tough enough to lead his team in big moments and when being tested by his opponents. He told the LA Times that he was being tested by certain players like Dennis Johnson and Wes Matthews, the Chicago Bulls point guard. He told the newspaper, "For us to win it all, I have to be more aggressive." That's exactly what we saw throughout the year. He was no longer tentative. Pat Riley knows the difference when he said this to the LA Times. When the game is on the line, he can be so aggressive. His mentality rubbed off on his teammates. There was a clear difference between last year's team and this one. For example, check out what Denver Nuggets head coach Doug Moe said to Sports Illustrated in 1985. There's no comparison between this year's Lakers team and last year's. They're 10 times better than last year. They're tougher mentally, and physically, they're playing better. End of quote. It's an intangible aspect that helped the Lakers reach new heights. But what really helped them have such a dominant season was the improvements that players like James Worthy and Byron Scott had. The numbers showed that they made a significant jump. James Worthy improved from being a 14.5 points per game scorer to averaging 17.6 points. For the majority of the 1984 season, he had to play behind Jamal Wilkes. However, he had a series of injuries that eventually ended his career, and James was able to become a very valuable piece. Then Byron Scott improved from being a 10.6 points per game scorer to averaging 16 points. He came in as a rookie the prior season, looking to replace Norm Nixon. It should be noted that he played a big role for the 2 titles the Lakers won. However, they're looking to transition with the younger talent that they drafted, and these 2 particular players were able to progress very quickly. Byron Scott might not have been a greater player than Nixon was, but you can make an argument that he was a better fit. Here's what Pat Riley said about this to the New York Times that year. Teams are so aware of him now that we often use him as a decoy. We'll run a play for him knowing that his guy will guard him because he's the best shooter in basketball. End of quote. Then there was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was 38 years old and was playing in his 17th season. He was still considered a top 5 player in the league. He finished 4th in MVP voting. He was only 2 spots behind Magic. He averaged 22 points per game on 59.9% shooting. He still had the most unstoppable move in basketball. If you look at the numbers, the averages increased in every single category from the previous year. For a player that already accomplished so much, it was obvious that he also felt that he had something to prove. Then coming off the bench, you had Michael Cooper, who was one of the top individual defenders in the league. You also had Bob McAdoo and Mike McGee, who both averaged in double figures. They were loaded from top to bottom. It's no wonder that they had the type of season that they had. They finished with 62 wins, only 1 game behind the Celtics for the best record. They finished first in offensive rating and net rating. But let's be honest, the regular season isn't what makes these teams so memorable. The reason why they are arguably one of the 10 greatest teams of all time is the historic playoff run that they had. I know I'm going to surprise so many people with the numbers that they recorded. They have the record for the highest points per game average ever. They averaged 126.3 points per game. On top of that, they posted the highest field goal percentage by a team that went farther than the first round. They averaged a mind-blowing 54.3%.
Thing that stands out to in my mind, as far as us winning that championship, is how in shape we were.
Yeah.
Pat Riley wanted everybody to do a little bit better than before, and when you run the treadmill and that incline goes up 1, 2, 3% grades, it becomes harder. And that year, that particular year in 1985, I went 22 minutes. I went 2 or 3 minutes longer. That meant that I was in condition.
Exactly.
Guard myself, Magic, you, Worthy, Green, Rambis, everybody had went up about 2 or 3, percentages on that, and I think that was the key for that season too, because we were ready.
They only lost 2 games before reaching the finals, winning by an average margin of 20.4 points per game. Overall, they posted a margin of victory of 10.16 for the postseason, which is the 10th highest ever for the shot clock era. On top of those dominant numbers, they went 15-4 in the playoffs. Those are all-time great numbers. You combine that with the regular season dominance and the talent that was on this team. I am seriously dumbfounded of why they are never brought up when discussing the greatest teams of all time. They are absolutely deserving to be in the conversation. It was the most impressive display of offense that we've ever seen. The scoring was coming from everywhere as the defenses didn't know whom to focus their attention on. For example, in their first round series against the Phoenix Suns, the leading scorer for the Lakers was the bench player, Mike McGee. He averaged for the series 19.7 points per game on 62% shooting. Another bench reserve, Bob McAdoo, was the 4th leading scorer for the Lakers. He averaged for the series 18.3 points per game on 69% shooting. How do you stop that? How many championship teams can say that their bench was giving as much production as the starters? Then in the conference finals against the Denver Nuggets, they had one of the most impressive performances in playoff history. In Game 5, they scored 153 points to advance to the finals. That is tied for the 4th highest scoring total in a playoff game ever. After the series, an exasperated Doug Moe said this to Sports Illustrated: "It's bad enough You gotta try and stop Kareem and Worthy inside. Now they're so bleeping tough from the outside, it seems like they hit every shot they take." End of quote. He wasn't exaggerating, as the numbers indicate. There was simply no defense that could cool down this team for an entire series. As a unit, they deserve recognition for what they accomplish. But there are certain individual players that were also able to make history. We have to start with Magic Johnson, who has a record that I believe will never be broken. For the playoffs, he averaged 15.2 assists per game, which is the highest mark ever. On top of that, he posted at least 10 assists every game, which is a feat that has never been done before or since. There has never been a player who could dominate the game without scoring in bunches like he could, and this postseason is a perfect example of his true greatness. In the semifinals against the Portland Trail Blazers, he recorded a stat line that is completely unique to him. For the series, he averaged 21.8 points on 57% shooting, 17 assists, 7.6 rebounds, and 1.8 steals per game. That's as close as you can get for a player to average 20 and 20 for a series. Jim Paxson said it best when he said this is Sports Illustrated about Magic. He can score 6 points and totally dominate the game, or he can decide they need points and go out and score 39. He just reads the flow of the game and decide what he's going to do that night. End of quote. But he's not the only one that deserves their roses. We also don't want to forget about James Worthy. This is when he established himself as one of the top small forwards in the league. For the playoffs, he averaged 21.5 points per game on 62% shooting. This is only the 6th time that a player has averaged over 20 points and 60% from the field while at least reaching the conference finals. He is joined by Shaq, Kareem, Mikal, and Dwight Howard. He is the only non-big man on that list. On top of that, he made history in the conference finals against the Nuggets. He averaged for the series 22.6 points per game on 72% shooting. That set an NBA record for accuracy. This perfectly represents just how unstoppable he was on offense. On the break, he was a perfect running mate for Magic. During this time of his career, he was one of the most exciting finishers. But the truth is that he didn't need Magic to set him up all the time. He was also very proficient in scoring in the mid-range. He was great at the post. He had a quick first step. He was one of the toughest players to guard one-on-one. After easily getting by their Western Conference opponents, it was time for the moment they've been waiting all year for. They had the momentum, the confidence to exact revenge against their nemesis, and it was quickly taken all away. Game 1 was known as the Memorial Day Massacre. They lost by 34 points. It's one of the worst finals defeats in league history. To this day, it's the most points scored in a finals game. They couldn't miss. They shot 61% as a team. They did a great job of swarming Kareem and making him a complete non-factor. It was deja vu all over again. It was a moment that could make or break a team. Considering the context, Game 2 was an absolute must-win. They bounced back like champions do, and they proved they were mentally strong enough to block out the noise. Michael Cooper deserves recognition for having his greatest performance in the finals. He had 22 points on 8 of 9 shooting, but nobody was more impressive than Kareem. After getting completely torched by the media for his lackluster efforts, he turned back the clock and had a vintage performance. He had 30 points on 58% shooting, 17 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 blocks, and 1 steal. It was a legendary all-around game. He didn't let the double teams get to him this time, and he showcased his supremely underrated passing abilities. With the series tied at 1 apiece, they had their swagger back. They looked like the Lakers again, and they completely overwhelmed the Celtics in Game 3. They scored 136 points and won by 25. They had the momentum back, but it wouldn't be for long. Game 4 was a legendary matchup that went down to the wire. They each were trading big baskets in the final moments. Magic Johnson was even able to provide a clutch putback that tied the game, but it was overshadowed by Dennis Johnson, who provided the ultra-rare buzzer beater in the finals. Now this series was anyone's game. This was the first time that the NBA presented the 2-3-2 format in the finals. They needed to take care of business at their home floor. That is when the new big three of the Lakers came to the rescue. They don't call James Worthy Big Game James for nothing. He had the best game of the series. He had 33 points on 77% shooting along with 8 rebounds. Then there was Magic, who also had his best game of the series. He recorded 26 points on 55% shooting, 17 assists, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals. This game perfectly illustrates why this team was so tough to beat, because Magic made it a point to keep pushing and pushing and pushing the ball until you'd break as a defense. Then there was Kareem. Between the two teams, there were 9 Hall of Famers. At 38 years old, he was once again the best player on the court. He scored a game-high 36 points on 57% shooting, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and 3 blocks. Nobody ever talks about this game, but with the stakes that they were playing with, this should definitely be remembered as one of Kareem's finest performances. It allowed the Lakers to be one game away from doing the impossible. That's winning the title at the Boston Garden.
I remember my dad taking me to the airport, and we're up 3-2 to Boston, and the next 2 games are supposed to be in Boston, and my dad said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Dad, we packed for one game." I said, "We're going to win this game in 6.
To accomplish this, they needed to play a complete game, and that's exactly what they did. Everybody from the Lakers stepped up. From Magic to Kurt Rambis, each player played their roles to perfection. On defense, they completely shut down the Celtics. They shot 38.5% as a team. In fact, this was the 3rd time during the playoffs where they forced their opponent to shoot under 40%. Let's not forget that they finished 7th in defensive rating that season. So we can say that the 85 Lakers met the criteria for an all-time great team. They had no weaknesses. But what made this championship even more satisfying was the way they were able to redeem themselves. For Magic, the nickname Tragic Johnson was never going to be uttered for the rest of his career. In fact, he averaged 14 assists per game in the finals, which is the all-time record. Then there was Kareem, who firmly established himself as one of the frontrunners for the elusive GOAT title. He became the oldest player to win the Finals MVP. He averaged 25.7 points on 60% shooting, 9 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 1.5 blocks per game. They are known as one of the greatest duos in league history for a reason. And on the biggest stage, they never played better together than they did here.
1985, that was our year. We finally beat the Celtics. The Lakers-Celtic thing was dead now because we went up there and whipped them in Boston Garden. We're the only team to win a world championship in Boston Garden other than the Boston Celtics. And they got to live with that forever. That's awesome, man. That made my career. It was that good to me. I enjoyed 1985. I'm still enjoying it.
This, among so many other reasons, is why the 1985 Lakers continue to be the most forgotten, but also one of the most dominant teams the NBA has ever seen. But what about you all? Do you think this was the best team from the Showtime era? What was your favorite moment from the 85 Lakers? Do you think they deserve to be in the top 10 conversation for the greatest teams? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.